Hey everyone, my name is Carlos Espinoza, and today I wanted to talk about someone that changed music and culture not only for his generation but for generations to come. The person I'm referring to is James Marshall Hendrix, but you guys probably know him better as Jimi Hendrix. So, before I go on to explain all the achievements and amazing things that Hendrix accomplished throughout his career, I kind of wanted to give you guys a background of his childhood and early adulthood, so you could sort of understand the things that would go on to shape him. And the story begins in 1942, November 27th, in Seattle, Washington. That was the date that Hendrix was born. He was born to Lucille Jeter and Al Hendrix. Al Hendrix was ex military, so he was kind of strict with Hendrix, and oftentimes he would tell him to be quiet or shut up. Basically, things that would limit his creativity. And on the other side, his mother, Lucille Jeter, she was actually an alcoholic, so at some times she wouldn't be around for Hendrix and his brother Leon, but they loved her more than anything because when she was around, she was kind. And so then in 1951, when Al and Lucille actually got a divorce, it was pretty heartbreaking for Jimmy and his brother. And in 1958, when she died of cirrhosis of the liver, that's what Jimi Hendrix's brother Leon notes with what made Hendrix become obsessed with the guitar. Leon said that he thought Hendrix would forever, throughout his life, try to channel his mother through the guitar, his mother's voice specifically. Um, and then, so after all these things happened in his childhood, um, at the age of 17, he got into some legal problems because he was riding in a stolen vehicle, and the judge gave him the option that he could either do a jail sentence or he could join the military. And so Jimmy decided that the military would be a better option for him. So he joined the military where he was eventually a paratrooper, and eventually he actually asked for his guitar to be sent to him to the military because he met someone whose name was Billy Cox, who was actually a bassist. So they were jamming in the military. But then he actually broke his ankle during one of the parachute jumps, and he was discharged from the military. So after that, him and Billy Cox would form a band called the Casual Kings that would tour in this tour pretty much called the Chitlin Circuit. And it's called the chitlin circuit because chitlin is actually a type of food, like kind of like scraps and meat that they would eat in these venues. And basically, um, the chitlin circuit was a lot of African American musicians because at this time during the 60s there was still a lot of racial tension and segregation going on. So this is where they would generally tour. People like Little Richard, Curtis Knight, the Isley Brothers. This is where all these musicians developed their skills. This is where Jimmy would develop his ability to play behind the back, his ability to play with his teeth. So many ridiculous things he developed here. But basically, that was the period in time where he developed his insane skills. After that, he moved to New York in 1965, where he was playing in a band called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. And basically, a woman named Linda Keith, who was actually the girlfriend of Keith Richard at the time, who was the lead guitarist of the Rolling Stones, was in a bar called Cafe Wall in New York City, Manhattan. And basically she heard him, and the moment she heard him she knew he was going to be a star. She had no doubt in her mind. So with all the connections that she had, she decided that she was going to invite record producers and executives to come to the club so they could hear Hendrix play to try to get him a deal. And so basically, she brought person after person. Everyone told her, we don't want anything to do with him. They're not going to understand him. It's garbage. The music doesn't make sense. And then eventually, someone named Chaz Chandler, who was actually the bassist for a band called The Animals, decided to come into the club after he was invited by Linda, heard Hendrix play, and decided that he wanted to sign him instantly. He was the bassist for The Animals, but he was trying to manage acts at this point in his life because the group had just separated. And so basically, he told Hendrix, I want you to come back to England with me. I want to make a band for you, and I want to make you a legend, pretty much. And so Hendrix's only request was that he would be introduced to someone who he considered a god at the time, which was Eric Clapton. And Eric Clapton was pretty much the greatest guitarist in England at this time. And evidence of that can be seen with during this time, the people in London would write on the walls, Clapton is God, all things like that. So when Hendrix went to England, he actually asked to perform on stage with Clapton, and he actually upstaged Clapton by performing a song that Clapton couldn't play as well, called Killing Floor. And so Clapton was very embarrassed. He went backstage. He was mad. He told Chaz Chandler, who was Jimmy's manager, "You didn't tell me he could play that well." He was very angry. But that event propelled Hendrix because after that, he was known as the person who killed God. But, God was referring to Clapton. So that was huge headlines for him, great press. He got huge in the United Kingdom, and then later on, that buzz would eventually translate to America, and he would come back to America to perform in the Monterey Pop Festival. And then after that, after the Monterey Pop Festival, that's what made him huge in America. He became a legend after that. And then actually because of what he did during that time. He burned a guitar at the Monterey Pop Festival. He was the first person to do it. And after that, everyone was destroying guitars on stage. Every single person after that. They thought it was the craziest thing. He poured lighter fluid on the guitar, burned it, and the guitar that Hendrix actually loved the most was a Fender Stratocaster, and he preferred this guitar because of the thin neck, because he was a blues player. So what they do is they like to wrap their thumb around this side to play a bass note while playing high notes, so they could play both at the same time. Hendrix also liked this guitar because you could switch between the three pickups, and he preferred to play on the top one because it created the warmest tone, and that's what he liked. But if he wasn't playing on that tone, he would play on the center tone. But he would rarely ever play on this tone unless he was in a solo or something. But he also liked this guitar because you could put a whammy bar and create a bunch of different sounds. But besides that, his biggest contribution to music, I would say, was probably the use of distortion. Because in the 60s, they only had tube amplifiers, not electric amplifiers. So if you wanted distortion, the only way to get it was natural. So the natural way to do it was to just play the amplifier all day, so that the tubes would get hot and create a distorted sound that people actually didn't like, but Hendrix made it into a sound that he liked. With all his creative thinking, he created a new way to view the instrument, a new way to view music, and he inspired me and countless other artists in every single genre of music. There's not a single genre that doesn't draw an influence from Hendrix. Not a single one.